Welcome back for our first learning unit in Module 6. In this unit, we will briefly introduce the concept of education through sport as a basis for facilitating life skills development through sport. So let's start with the question, what is education through sport? The relation between sport and education is not new. As you may already know, sport and play were already recognized in antiquity as a goal and instrument of education. And some modern European sports even emerged from educational movements or environments. For example, the sport games of football and rugby, which are globally popular sports today, originated in the 19th century in public schools in England, where great educational potential was recognized in sport. Today, physical education is an integral part of school-based education in all European countries. Developing sports literacy is a requirement for lifelong physical activity, and it may be considered as one of the most important learning objectives of school-based sports education. But whilst the relation between sport and education seems clear to most, there is always a bit of confusion about the distinction between what education for, in and through sport is, and which approach is eventually more or less valuable or applicable. From our point of view, it is helpful to distinguish on an analytical level between these three areas. Yet, at the same time, we must acknowledge that they often overlap, and that, in practice, they take place simultaneously. In addition, they are equally important. Therefore, when we talk about education through sport in this learning module, we acknowledge the educational benefits of education for sport, in sport, and through sport. So, let's have a closer look at these three areas through a simple model. Education for sport is at the base of our model, whereby two different aspects have to be considered. Firstly, on the social level, it is the question of accessibility. Because if sport is to be used as an educational method, it must be made accessible and inclusive for everybody in the target group. And secondly, on the individual level, there is a need for sufficient sport literacy. Only those who can read can learn from books, and only those who can run, jump, or catch a ball can properly learn in and through sport. The second layer of our model is education in sport. Education in sport refers to sport as a setting or learning environment. This learning environment is usually attractive and interesting, especially for children, and it enables learning with all senses in a complex social environment. It provides countless opportunities for unplanned, informal learning. The authenticity and emotional significance of what is experienced ensures a lasting learning experience. The third layer of our model is education through sport. Education through sport can be described as a targeted process. Learning takes place in a planned, targeted, and controlled way. The systematic debriefing and reflection of experiences or specific events in the context of sporting activities, which we describe as so-called teachable moments, is a core element of education through sport. Therefore, education through sport is particularly suitable for equipping your learners with a wide range of life skills. The targeted use of sport as a learning tool can be used to initiate learning processes. However, the approach reaches its limits when teachable moments are always deliberately created. In the long run, this leads to a series of artificial or even meaningless learning situations. Only when similar but authentic situations are experienced in unplanned situations, for example, in competitive sports, sport will unfold its full educational potential. With it, you will have noticed that education through sport, as a specific methodological approach, is most frequently used in non-formal education programs or settings. In contrast, our EPRIME learning modules aim at rather formal physical education activities, in which educators and teachers often focus less on these specific aspects of sport-based educational activities. Yet we believe that all three approaches are relevant for educators and teachers, especially when we consider or plan them in different combinations. This is also because of the fact that the approaches of education in sport and education through sport are based on similar educational principles. So, let's have a look at some examples. As said before, education for sport is at the base of our model, because only those who can run, jump, or catch a ball can properly learn in and through sport. In the context of formal education, an example is that Tim learns to swim during a swim class at school. In the context of non-formal education at a football club, Demir participates in a video analysis session to improve his tactical skills. And in the context of informal education, Ida improves her dribbling skills by joining a 3 versus 3 basketball game during her school lunch breaks. It means that after having completed our learning units and after some practical training sessions, you will be not aware of the key conceptual considerations to include education and life skills development in your physical education activities, but you will also hold a hands-on toolbox to realize it in practice. However, please always keep in mind that this is an introductory course that can only focus on basic principles and first steps. We therefore recommend to deepen your knowledge and establish approaches and measures that match your very own context and circumstances. For now, I say goodbye, and I hope that you will enjoy your learning journey. Last but not least, let's look at examples as regards education through sport. In the context of formal education, a physical education teacher uses the Football 3 methodology in his physical education classes to develop conflict resolution skills. And in the context of non-formal education, a youth worker thoroughly debriefs her sport activities with the participants of her Girls Empowerment course. And as said, we believe that the sport through education approach is best used when we consider or plan different combinations of all of these sport-based learning approaches. After this first introduction of what is education through sport, in the next learning unit, we reflect about what are so-called teachable moments in the context of education and life skills development through sport.